racegoers will know, has always been an 8s regatta. And for the first time this year, the organisers have included a women's 4 event. The reason for that, of course, is that the NCAA selection for the NCAA championships is done largely on the basis of teams. Teams made up of a first varsity 8, a second varsity 8, and a first varsity 4. So many of these teams that are here at this regatta, these results count towards their ultimate selection or non-selection for the NCAA championships, and the regatta organisers have accommodated the needs of those collegiate programs by including a women's collegiate 4 event for the first time, so that these programs can race as teams, because it's their results as teams which can be super critical to that selection Sunday process when it happens.
Virginia, UCLA, Clemson, USC, Oklahoma, British Columbia, San Diego State. Attention. Go!
We have a start for event number 11, Women's Collegiate 4 with coxswain. You'll see as the camera pans in that the coxswain lies down forward in the bow of the boat, pretty much like a Formula One racer, keeping the weight forward. It's up to the oars women to make sure the rating is correct. That being said, in lane 1, University of Virginia is your early race leader, with UCLA in the 2nd spot. Then Oklahoma is in 4th, and the rest are too close to call. San Diego State in lane 7 is the trailing crew. So we're coming up to 250 meters into the race. University of Virginia with a slight advantage now over UCLA. And then it looks like Southern California is in that 3rd spot. Then Clemson, Oklahoma, University of British Columbia, and San Diego State is in that 7th position. Of course, it's much slower in a 4 with coxswain. You don't get as much run per stroke, so you really have to have a strong finish and really pick the boat up with a direct catch. The inside lanes now, it's still the Cavaliers from Virginia, your leader, with a slight advantage over UCLA. Now UCLA looks like they've moved into the lead over Virginia. And then coming out here, the Sooners from Oklahoma seem to be in that 3rd spot, followed by USC and then Clemson. So 1/4 of the way down the course, it's UCLA leading slightly over Virginia. Then it's Oklahoma and USC, Clemson, University of British Columbia, and in the 7th spot, San Diego State.
This, as Charles mentioned, and Jim also mentioned it as well, is an unusual event for our San Diego Crew Classic, where 8s are the norm. This is a 4 with coxswain, and our lane assignments, number 1, Virginia. In number 2, it is UCLA. Clemson is in number 3. Lane 4 is occupied by the University of Southern California, USC. Lane 5, Oklahoma. British Columbia is pulling out of lane 6, and San Diego State is all the way on the outside in lane number 7.
Always very difficult to know what early season form in previous races means for the 4s, because coaches are moving lineups around the whole time in lead-up regattas. What we do know is this: Virginia in lane 1, they've beaten Louisville, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Minnesota, and Duke. In lane 2, UCLA have beaten Loyola Marymount and the University of San Diego. In lane 3, Clemson have beaten Eastern Michigan, Northeastern, Syracuse, Indiana, Iowa, and Kansas. So those 3 crews in lanes 1, 2, and 3, they're unbeaten in 4s so far this season. USC in lane 4 are unknown quantity. Oklahoma in lane 5, they've beaten Southern Methodist twice, Tulsa, Kansas State, and Kansas, but they've also gone down to the University of San Diego, Central Florida, and Texas. University of British Columbia, an unknown quantity in lane 6, and San Diego State have beaten Loyola Marymount, but gone down to Sacramento State.
UCLA on the lead. They are in lane number 2. Virginia on their shoreline side. Followed on the far outside by Oklahoma. USC and Clemson. British Columbia far outside, and San Diego State University trailing. While we're in the middle of the race here, Charles, if you wouldn't mind commenting a bit on what the coach's philosophy would be on placing a crew member in an 8 and a 4.
Yes, certainly. I mean, in theory, at least, you have your first 2 quartets of rowers, your best 2 quartets of rowers sitting in your varsity A, and your 3rd and 4th quartets of rowers sitting in your junior varsity 8, your second varsity.
Event number 12.
And this would then be the
Women's
5th
Collegiate
quartet of rowers in your sort of rankings and lineup of athletes
USC,
who'd be sitting in the 4.
lane 1.
But in the early
Washington
season races,
State,
and even up to and
lane
including
2.
this regatta,
Virginia,
coaches will be moving
lane
team
3.
members or crew members
Oregon
around
State,
within the
lane
various
4.
boats, swapping them between the
Duke,
4 and the JV,
lane
the
5.
JV and
Sacramento,
the varsity,
lane 6.
trying to find the best
Alabama,
combinations that make all
lane
those boats
7.
go fastest.
5 minutes.
On the water right now is a coxswain with 4, or 4 with coxswain. Move along a little bit slower, obviously, than the 8s. They're coming through with about 750 meters to go, and the form is staying pretty much the same as it has been from the very beginning, with UCLA in lane number 2. But all the way on the outside, British Columbia has suddenly gotten into the mix of things and begun to exert themselves as they have eclipsed several crews getting up to that location. UCLA in lane 2. Along the shoreline, Virginia. Then going outside to USC. Then inside to Clemson. Oklahoma in the early hunt has fallen back just a little bit.
Yes, University of British Columbia on the outside. Of course, they're from Canada, so not part of the NCAA setup. Nothing to stop them doubling their rowers into this event out of their 8. And they really are putting the pedal to the metal at this point and rowing at a very significantly higher stroke rating than the crews on the inside. But notwithstanding that, they don't seem to be making any impact on Virginia and UCLA. Virginia seem to have snuck through to a slight lead over UCLA at this point, and the 3rd spot is really up for grabs at the moment between Clemson and USC.
Along the shoreline, Virginia has had a good row in the last 250, 300 meters, and it looks like they've nosed out in front of UCLA. There is open water back to the far outside. That is British Columbia out there. And then on the near side, it is Clemson and USC, with Oklahoma and San Diego State University trailing. Looks like we're going to have a sharp finish here as Virginia and UCLA are coming down to the wire. Powder blue, UCLA, Virginia in their bright orange, and they are almost stroke for stroke as they near our finish line. This is Virginia on the outside and UCLA nearest the camera. And at that angle, it's hard to tell, but it looks like Virginia may have just barely snuck in there and gotten past UCLA. Now we have open water back to British Columbia, but it looks like Clemson may pick up that final position. I stand corrected. It is British Columbia unofficially on the outside, followed by Clemson, and then USC with Oklahoma and San Diego State trailing.
And obviously there are 3 heats in this 4s, so it's the top 2 boats that will go to the grand final. And the race for 3rd, 4th and 5th that was happening there was to decide which two boats were going to go into the petite final, and the one that lost out, which appeared to be USC, they'll be in the third final. That's, of course, unofficial. Don't rely on those callings.